Good day to our viewers. So this is AAA Live here at Katipunan channel, where your academic goals are advanced and achieved. And of course, we are airing every Wednesday nights from 7 to 8 in the evening. So you can follow us in our channel, like, subscribe, and follow us at our Facebook and YouTube channels. So for today, we are being joined by Professor Darryl Mercer. He is the president of the American University of Sovereign Nations, and he will be discussing with us his experiences as the head of this institution, as well as some of his experiences leading up to his field of study. So good evening to you, Professor Darryl. Maybe you can give us some greetings to our viewers who are mostly stakeholders in the education sector, students, parents, administrators, faculty, and those who are all interested in the education sector. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Kia ora. It's wonderful to join you. I have visited the campus several times, and
Yes.
I grew up in New Zealand, and it's wonderful to share experience and encourage others to develop your
Yes.
skills and grow.
Yes, thank you very much for giving us your valuable time for today. So maybe let's start from really when you were a young person, as you mentioned, because you actually grew up in New Zealand. But today, of course, you are based in several countries in the United States and Japan and Thailand. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your interests as a young person and how and when did you actually decide on your field of study?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes, so I grew up in New Zealand in the 1960s, and it was a very wonderful time and place to be there. I had an opportunity to go to a primary school just across the road from my house.
Yes.
It's New Zealand is a very egalitarian society, so we
Yes.
don't have upper class and lower class. Everyone is similar economically, and children can just enjoy to study and to play after school.
Yes, very idyllic.
Yeah, and a very safe place. We could walk
Yes.
around the streets. Usually kids would go and visit their friend's house, just walk to school.
Yes.
And lots of grass and lots of empty space, playing in trees. So I think that love of nature was very important.
Yes.
I went through the school system in New Zealand and went to university in the University of Canterbury and Lincoln
Yes.
College. I studied, at that time I studied biochemistry.
Yes.
Probably when I was about 10 or 11, we were watching often Jacques Cousteau
Yes.
oceanography documentaries, and I love
Yes.
nature, so I wanted to be an oceanographer initially.
Yeah, after watching that.
Yes, and then I used to spend every weekend going fishing in the mountains with my father, who loved fishing, and my mother was an artist, so
Yes.
I loved watching birds and enjoying nature.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied, in the end at university, I studied chemistry and biochemistry,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very determined to become a scientist.
Yes.
So then I got a scholarship to go to Cambridge University in England, and
Yes.
so I did my PhD in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really, for me, this was an expectation, a normal thing, but I enjoyed university. I studied. I actually left school a year or two earlier to go straight to university. Our system provided flexibility to do that.
Very well.
But during the gap in the year between
Yes.
the New Zealand academic year and the British academic year, I had a chance I was actually traveled in Australia and tenting and visiting friends.
Yes.
And also reading, and I was very involved in my church activities as well, leading
Yes.
youth work. But I read a book by Martin Luther King Jr. Called
Yes.
Strength to Love, and that really inspired me to work for social justice.
Yes.
And although I could have changed my field in Cambridge, I still decided to study biochemistry. But to move into this field of bridging science and society. And so that was my intention. So the day I finished my thesis in biochemistry, I moved to study books on bioethics and history of science and philosophy, and that's my field, bioethics, study of life and science.
Yes.
And so although we can reduce things to molecules in DNA, and I love to understand things, that scientific thinking was very useful.
Yes,
But
definitely. And the discipline.
Yeah, the discipline and the rigor, but the understanding the world, what is life, what is love, what is the meaning of people getting together and how we can help people. This was a bigger motivation. So I just learn every day of my life. I'm still a student.
Yes,
and I
lifelong
think this
learner.
Lifelong learner. So this love of learning is critical for us, but motivation. So that was sort of my early years. Actually, for those who have to study hard, I feel really sorry. I in my high school, I played tennis every day for 2 or 3 hours after school. I didn't study. But apparently my parents thought they had to drag me out of my room to study, but I was enjoying my garden, my sports, and everything. So I think this balanced approach is very good. I feel really sorry for kids who have to think they have to study in exams. I don't think this is the best way to develop, and I think our education system has many challenges for the creativity.
Yes. So you were talking about your experiential learning, so having had both the interest and the aptitude apparently for science, and then you mentioned a very influential book of Martin Luther King that really influenced you to see the world not just from a scientific perspective, but more of a social justice perspective. So what do you think would be like the qualities and those kinds of learnings and skills that young people should actually try to develop? Because you mentioned about creativity. You talked about the idyllic childhood of balancing not only about the studies, but also actor activities and other interests like arts outside of what the actual field of study is. So what do you think all of these should be developed in an individual as a student, as a learner?
I think we need to encourage people to do what they're passionate about. And you can learn different things, but do it properly. Learn if some things will suit you, some things will not. Some people are good at climbing trees. Some people are good at fishing. Some people are good at reading books. Some people are good at art or singing.
There's always an inclination and aptitude.
Yeah. So if you're good at mathematics or you're good at, pictures, do what you're good to do. Some people are good at talking. Some people are very social. So I think the challenge right now has been one part of the social experience of youth is challenged by the COVID-19 pandemic. And how do we find that? How do we replace that? Is very difficult. I think this is really critical as an educator. And as you asked me, my past experience, I think it was very critical to get out and see nature and see people.
Yes.
And also my life, with my job, I've been able to travel to 60, maybe 70 countries of the world. And I spend a lot of time in different spaces. And I think this opening up new paths of study is good. How do we be creative? I mean, try something different. Don't be afraid.
Yes.
And our school systems need to encourage this. They need to reward people for community service. They need to reward people for trying something different. Even if you're not a great artist, then if you enjoy it, try it. And at the same time, I don't know what it would be like if we were stuck in computers, social media, telephones. Now, I think it can be very positive for self-motivated learning.
Yes.
Because I used to spend, many days, if I wasn't playing tennis, I'd often stop in the library, public library, and learn more books. And that was a space. So we could, this hunger for information is critical.
Yes. So can you tell us a little bit about your career trajectory and how you actually navigated that particular life experience together with your work, as you've mentioned?
Yeah. Yeah, I thank you. I will, from the time in New Zealand, as I said, I really wanted to get the scholarship to go to Cambridge. It was the only way. My family was, I was the first one to go to a, university,
University, yes.
and I think this was this progression to England really opened my eyes.
Yes.
But also it was somewhat interesting to crack the idea of an ivory tower. It was,
Yes.
the people were the same, and actually the motivation that I had to
Mm-hmm.
do things to change the world, I sadly didn't find it in many people, even in Cambridge, and I felt
Yes.
this is such a sad thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I went back after that to New Zealand to work for the government for 6 months or so to set up a bioethics and biotechnology program. But
Yes.
I had met a friend in Cambridge and then I decided to go as a foreign professor
Mm-hmm.
to go to Japan. And so I
Yes.
became a foreign professor in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why I tried to have this experience of teaching bioethics and biotechnology for
Yes.
about 15 years. And so I was teaching in Japan
Yes.
and developing bioethics across Asia.
Yes.
And then I moved to, I was asked to join UNESCO. And
Yes.
so as a UNESCO regional advisor for social and human sciences in Asia Pacific. So
Yes.
that was an occasion where I had spent 10 years based in Bangkok.
Yes.
Trying to advise governments and universities in 46 countries of Asia Pacific
Yes.
of issues of how social development, bioethics, youth,
Yes.
gender, human rights.
Yes.
I was traveling every week to a different country. And some of you may think as a young person, oh, that's a dream job. But
Exactly. Yes.
actually, it's a bit tiring. And then I couldn't even, I had to give up some of my research activities.
Yes.
But I had a staff, I had lots of interns. I wanted to develop, in the end, the educational capacity. And I tried to work with some, governments and countries. We established some programs. But in the end, in 2013, I decided the best way would be to found or co-found a university
Yes.
and decolonize university. So I got involved and work on decolonizing university in Africa and Asia towards the end of my work in UNESCO. And it sort of comes from, there's so many cultures, so much knowledge. So breaking the boundaries of what is education, what is knowledge, our epistemology of knowledge is different. So this is what we're trying to do. And it's been a great challenge. It's been so fascinating. I learn every day. I work a lot with, I continue to work with people all around the world, but also a lot with indigenous peoples.
Yes.
And their knowledge system has often been suppressed. So that's been, a challenge. You talked about, what is decolonization. So
Yes.
that's,
Your advocacy in terms of
yeah,
decolonizing education, which is, of course, as we know, mostly have been developed like from the European model and then, of course, propagated through like the more North American models. Yes.
yeah, yes. And so this is such an interesting thing. And it's a duty, I think, for all of us. If we really want to understand wisdom, we have to rejoice in wisdom and share all those experiences. So, of course, the Philippines is such an interesting place with
Yes.
different suppression, the Spanish rule, the Americans, different periods, and finding the identity the construction of social classes.
Yes.
This has been a very interesting challenge for Philippine identity, and the same
It
as
is.
ASEAN identity and identity. Are you in the Pacific? Are you in Asia? Are you, ocean people, mountain people, forest people?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are we trying to make money or change the world? How do we cope with this? So many interesting things, and there is a space for everyone. And I think the only way we can make our world better is to challenge the system,
Yeah.
but challenge it positively and creatively. And that's what we can do. And then that comes back to the question of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have think outside of a box.
Yes.
So when coming back to, let's say you're a university president, how do we accept students into the university? What are we looking for? Are we looking for students who pass a written exam and go well in a national school system? Or are we looking for people who want to change or want to challenge the boundaries and learn some skills to do that? And I think that's what we're trying to do as in the university. So that's, I think, my trajectory has taught me.
So this transformative element that you mentioned about, actually it's an advocacy, because there is an existing mainstream model of education, right? And so what do you think would be your advice to young people? Because now we're in the field of education, which is transformative field. What would be your advice to young people in terms of like developing themselves, both personally and professionally, so that it is possible for them to derive meaning from what they will eventually be doing? Because in the end, each person's life is unique to his own.
Yeah, I think you need to not be afraid to make mistakes.
Yes.
To be yourself. I was once told, so where I did my PhD, we had 7 Nobel Prize winners. It was a dream, the home of molecular biology in Cambridge. And so in my lab, I always remember, some of my mentors saying, be bold and then suggest something. Nobody's going to remember you if you don't suggest something new, and you're not going to have innovation or creativity. So, and then there's sometimes, so for example, if you're answering an exam, you can regurgitate the textbook, and maybe that will give you a solid remark. But sometimes rewrite the question in the exam.
Rewrite the question for the
rewrite
teacher.
And say, ask the teacher, why do you ask this question? The answer is really we can't, or we have to do. And then you may want me to answer in this way, and the textbook says this and this and this, but I think this question is inappropriate, and then explain why. So try and become able to explain why you think it's different. And even if you make a mistake, at least the fact that you explain why, most teachers will award that. I think also I found some of the youth programs I developed, such as Youth Peace Ambassadors International and Looking Beyond Disaster, we developed social entrepreneurs. So social entrepreneurs create a space. And I think, okay, so now you have a lockdown. It's an opportunity and a challenge.
Yes, it is.
So it's we have to support people with so many stresses, mental health stresses, yet also it's an opportunity to do something different. So try to find that. And I think for institutions, we have to also attract people who are willing to take a risk as well. To say, okay, a professor says, we're going to encourage people. Okay, so, whether you're teaching about mathematics, okay, so apply your mathematics, do something to change the system, but do it constructively. Think about sustainability. What can you do? Can you make a living from this? Is there a gap? I think also many parents, for the students there, many of your parents are very conservative and just afraid. They're trying to do their best, but sometimes we have a generational gap and sometimes a challenge. So talk to your parents, find some supporters in your family, and don't just give up. your parents were once students too. Your parents were once young and they once had a vision to change and are just trying to be sometimes conservative. So they're just worried about economic survival. But there are different models. And so trying to find this and getting the supporters, the partnership.
As you know, as you were talking about like innovation in the last 10 years, most especially in the Philippines, we have been undergoing a sort of education revolution in that we're really shifting systems and really encountering firsthand the different initiatives and reforms. So how then do you make sense of all of these, well, it would seem like chaotic situation, and also with the pandemic, to meet the challenges for both the students and the parents to navigate during this quite difficult period that we are encountering right now for their education?
I think true learning is really what we're looking for.
Yes.
And when you have a hierarchical education system in the Philippines, such as the difference between national universities like UP and private universities and private schools. I did work on bioethics. I used to work with Ateneo, the Miller Boys School and Miriam College Girls School, and these were, kids are meant to, these are elite schools, but we have to, whatever school you go to, there's an opportunity, and sometimes these elite schools are not as creative as they should be. Yet, and maybe some private colleges are having great challenges now in the Philippines because parents have lost income. But what we really need is learning, and whether it be on a diploma that you get a piece of paper, or really what matters is learning, experience and learning. And also another thing is never give up for students. So, okay, you have to drop out because you have no money, or you seem like there's some blockage. Talk to the university, talk to them and say, look, for a year I need to take a leave because I have no money. See if the university can offer you a scholarship, see if they can offer solutions. Because it's in the interest of the institution that eventually you will pass and succeed. There are different trajectories. So explore this. And I think that's what we mean by opportunity. Don't just simply give up and walk away. Students should ask the institutions and find a solution. This is, institutions have to find solutions in this time as well. And I think different models are also interesting, although we can say it's chaotic, as you mentioned. If things that people are doing different trajectories, but actually this is a melting pot of education. Some systems will suit for certain types of career and certain types of life, and other systems will suit for other types. We need to, water 1,000 flowers, I was saying. Every flower is wonderful, and there's different ways.
Yes. So I think initiative, as you've mentioned, innovation and dynamism for both the students as well as the institution is what you have imparted to us. Those are the qualities that we would like to actually develop for students, learners, and the stakeholders of the education to develop. So I think as a parting word, Professor Darryl, can you please give the essence to your sense of what education can bring to us and give to us to encourage the young people, again, as you said, to never give up and to continue despite all of the challenges that we are currently facing in education?
I think dialogue is a critical element in addition to those, and we do find something you love to do and do it. And then this is a passion. If you don't have passion, so, if your parents asked you to do some other career and you're really passionate about something else, then talk to people, explore your passion and find it. And make your passion a reality, a realistic plan. Develop plans, and see if it works. If it doesn't work, try again. If you fall over, pick
Yes.
up yourself and just keep walking. There is a solution, and no person is an island. Never get isolated. Talk to people. Find nowadays one of the big things of social media and talking is we can find people with similar interests or similar passions in different parts of the world. We can share, we can develop, we can learn together. So it's a great age of education, and
Yes.
this global education is really critical.
Yes, so thank you so much, Professor Darryl, for your very valuable insight and, of course, the inspiration for our students to actually step out and be innovative and think out of the box, because that is what actually you've been doing all your life,
Thank you.
challenging with your advocacies and, of course, your conviction that there is always a positive change that we can do for ourselves and for the world around us. So we look so forward again to your visits to the Philippines, and I certainly would be looking forward to meeting again personally very, very soon. So we're back to AAA Live, where your academic goals are advanced and achieved. This is Attorney AMIHAN ALCAZAR, and tonight we'll be joined by our guest to discuss the field of law. So Attorney Jeovert Solanoy, can you please give greetings to our audience, the students, teachers, parents, administrators, and stakeholders of the education sector for today?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Attorney Jeovert Solanoy, and thank you, Dr. April, for inviting me to guest on your show. And I'm really excited to share with you all my learnings with regard to the study of law.
Okay, thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. So I think what we really were so interested, because people always have the impression that law is a difficult subject. So as a young person, when and how did you develop your interest, and did you have some other interest besides this when you were a young person?
Yeah, when I was younger, I am particularly fond of reading newspapers. My uncle
Yes.
used to bring home several newspapers from their work. So we have, I think, just three broadsheets and four tabloids. So I would read them every day, all of these
Mm-hmm.
newspapers. And so I developed that habit of reading and later on watching the news. So I am really into the news. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was in high school, I think that was the time that I developed a liking for the field of law. So
Yes.
in high school, we had this career streaming program where you will be in fourth during your fourth year studies, you
Yes.
will be asked to choose which particular field you want to take in college. So that would help you in deciding. So I chose the pre-law course. So
Which
I
was
think
what pre-law course did you take specifically?
it was a general pre-law course that was designed for high school students. So in our school, we had a pre-law class, a pre-med class, an engineering
Yes.
class, and
Yes.
business class. So among all the
Mhm.
choices that were available, I chose law, the pre-law study. So our subjects then were geared or designed to prepare us for
Mhm.
an eventual study in law. So we had
Mm.
argumentation and debate, logic as our
Yes.
electives. So I think it really helped a lot. And it was even before the K to 12 was
Yes.
implemented here in the Philippines. So I think it's the K to 12 program is really would really help the students decide what they want to take up in college, or
Yeah.
what they want to be as to be as a
Eventually.
career.
So
Yes.
I think you mentioned about some of your experiential learnings. So what do
Mhm.
you think would be like the skills and competencies that a young person should develop? You've already mentioned about like your love for reading if they actually wanted to be in the field of law. So particular skills and competencies that you think they should start early on and developing.
Yeah. As I've said, it's reading because uh, in law school you will be required to read several
Mhm.
cases. So that's
Yes.
several. So for me, it was I did my legal studies 2001 to 2005. So at that time there was already several cases that we were required to read. So by
Mhm.
now those students who would want to take up law would
Yes.
between 2000 and to the present, there's additional number of cases. So you really
Yes.
have to read a lot. So that's one thing is develop a love for reading, and then your
Uh-huh.
communication skills as well. So
Yes.
back in school, grade school and high school, or even in college, my favorite subjects were math and English.
Yes.
So the my love for these subjects helped me a lot in
Mhm.
communicating with the clients,
Mhm.
or answering the questions during recitation with the
Yes.
professors. So if you don't know, of course, you just read, and then you read the provisions of the law, then you have to interpret
Yes.
it, or when you're asked by a question by your professors, then you'll
Mhm.
have to answer it and defend your answer to them so that you'll get a good grade.
Okay. So what eventually led you then? So after you studied law, as you mentioned, the career trajectory that you eventually wanted to pursue after you became a lawyer. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Okay. Um, when I was studying law, I thought that I would want to go into corporate law practice.
Yes.
That
Mm-hmm.
means being an in-house counsel for a company, and
Mm-hmm.
so I did that. For the first 2 years of my professional experience, I was legal counsel for several
Yes.
for a particular mining company. So after that, I was thrust into the litigation world. I didn't at the beginning. I really didn't want to go into litigation because
Yes.
it's
Uh-huh.
it demands a lot of your time. But
Yes.
I don't know, by some stroke of luck, I think I was
Mm-hmm. You
pushed into
did?
that field. So, and eventually I learned to love it. I really love it that I spent 15
Mm-hmm.
years now in litigation.
In
So,
litigation. Mm-hmm.
yes, it's really fulfilling as a lawyer to be in the litigation field. Um, but now, since I have been there for 15 years, I have been doing court
Mm-hmm.
work for 15 years. I now would want to go back into the academe to
Mm-hmm.
be able to learn more about other fields of law, because in litigation you will be exposed to different kinds of law, but
Yes.
of course your knowledge of these laws will be limited, in particular to the case that you are handling.
Yes. That you're
So
handling.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
when you go back to the academy, it's a more comprehensive look at the laws and
Mm-hmm.
how it will affect the course of jurisprudence.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so that's why right now I am thinking of going back into legal studies, particularly in the
Yes.
field of European law and international law. So
Can you
I
tell us
got
a little bit about the process of how you decided to pursue your graduate studies, to give our audience a little bit of background about what opportunities may be out there for them in terms of like studies in other countries?
Oh yes. I first with regard to the international law and
Yes, and
European law
European law,
program.
why you were interested to study that. You mentioned it a little bit already.
Yes,
Yes.
as I mentioned earlier, I really am into reading and watching the news.
Yes.
So I have been exposed to the news surrounding the European Union and the
Yes.
international law in general. So
In
the
general.
news about the what's happening in Europe. So that
Yes.
I got interested. So I wanted to learn more because I know my knowledge about this happen or these events are
Mhm.
limited. So
Yes.
what I hear in the news. So it would be nice if I am able to understand it more and to
Mhm.
know more about it through a formal study. So I
Yes.
was looking for a particular course. Eventually,
Mhm.
I was able to find out about an international law and European law program
Mhm.
which is based in which is
Yes.
being offered by a university based in the Czech Republic. So
Mhm.
I've been on the lookout for different opportunities for studies. So I've been
Yes.
attending several webinars
Mhm.
conducted by embassies or other groups that are specializing in offering this possible
Mhm.
opportunities for education.
Yes. So I think right now, so because your interest is to eventually go into the academe, so what sort of research are you expecting to be conducting for international and European law?
Right now, I want to study more about the since the European law we would be studying I check out the course offerings, so it will
Yes.
be dealing a lot with the European Union law, and
Yes.
also considering that here in the Philippines we have the
Yes.
organizational group ASEAN.
Yes.
Maybe we can do a comparative study. I want to do a
Of that.
comparative study
Yes.
with of the how the EU works and how the ASEAN works and what particular aspects of the EU will be applicable or useful to the ASEAN and vice versa. So I'm sure there are other learnings from the ASEAN that the European
Mhm.
Union can take a cue or one for or any learning to apply to their on the side of the world. So that's
Yes.
one possible area of study that I would want to explore. So for now, it's a generic idea, but hopefully, as I go along my studies, I'll be able to
Yes.
go into the specific aspect of that study.
Yes. So I think that's very admirable in the sense that you would want to continue like learning and
Yes.
really becoming more in-depth studies of the law. So what do you think would be the personal qualities that a young person should also develop besides, of course, studying the technical aspects of the field of study so that they could have a higher probability of being successful in the field of law?
Okay. Um, I, when I was in law school, I would always hear this passage or tip that when
Mhm.
you you have to always to be prepared. So
Yes.
preparation is the key. So
Yes.
whenever there are recitations, you
Mhm.
have to be prepared. Otherwise, you'll get flunk. You'll flunk that recitation.
Yes.
So and it's the same even when you're in practice. Preparation is always the key. Preparation is 90% of the work of the success that most lawyers would have. So you have to develop that as a young student or even
Mhm.
when you're in high school or any or a lower level of studies, you
Mhm.
have to be really prepared in dealing with the task at hand. So that's one, and another is patience because
Mhm.
you as lawyers we encounter several things that may not be favorable to us. So you just have to be
Yes.
patient that that at some point in time you'll get it, that you'll be
Yes.
able to get the results that you desire. And
Mhm.
lastly is, so when you're patient, you also have to be persistent and
Yes,
persevere.
persistent.
So persistence and perseverance, those are very helpful qualities for someone who want to be a legal professional.
Yes. So I think for the last part of it, of course, we're really talking about making the decision for our young people about what particular field of study they're going to have and maybe what particular career they might pursue later on in their life. So right now, since you've already been a professional for like almost like 2 decades, so what kind of advice can you give to our young people if they really want to be in your field of study? What considerations should they have before they make those kinds of decisions? And hopefully, besides all the skills and the personal qualities that you mentioned in general, for them to pursue their life related to the law.
Well, I think you first, that's why I was glad that you asked me about my interest when
Yes,
I was younger.
yes,
So
yes,
because
definitely.
that is key to your success in any profession, that you have to align your interest to what you want to
Mm,
take up or what you want to become. So on my
yes,
part, I was really into reading in the news and what's happening in the current events. So I
current
think that's one,
events, yes.
yes, that's one aspect of law that,
Mhm.
of course, uh, and also I have this love for learning new things. And in the field of law, you will not only be exposed to the procedures of law or just the law, because in
Yes,
each of the cases you are handling, you will be
yes.
exposed to different aspects of life or business. So for example, you'll have a client who is a doctor, so you have to uh,
No.
to know more about their profession. Also, you have a client
Mhm.
for in the construction industry, so you have to know
Mhm.
the construction industry. So that's a thirst for learning that the or knowledge that
Yes.
the young person should develop. Going back, so it has to be something that is attuned or aligned with the interests, so that
Mhm.
they can be successful in whatever field that they want to go into in the future.
Mhm. Mhm. I see. So definitely there's a lot of takeaway insofar as what you were saying, both the technical skills that need to be developed and then the personal skills. And then it really begins with alignment of the interest and motivation that to eventually pursue all of these learnings for a long period of time.
Can I
So
also share, Dr. April, that
yes,
as I
please.
also told you, in the beginning, I didn't want to be in the litigation field. I wanted to
Yes.
be corporate.
What
So along,
happened? Do you remember that particular incident or reason really why it triggered your interest in litigation?
well, actually, it was not really my choice to begin with.
Yes.
I applied for a job, and the job
Yes.
entailed
And
litigation.
they
So
assigned it to you.
yes, and it was I thought of it as a challenge. So
Okay.
if as a challenge to learn more and
Mm-hmm.
to improve myself.
Mm-hmm.
So when my boss uh, assigned me to do litigation, I took it.
Yes.
So eventually, I learned to love it, and that's how it has been, even for particular cases.
Mm-hmm.
You take on a case that you haven't done before, or in a field that you haven't
Mm-hmm.
done before. For example, criminal law. I
Yes.
think I took it, and I took it as a challenge, and I welcomed it as a
Mm-hmm.
possible learning opportunity, and
Yes.
also as an improvement for myself. So that's how I view things. So every time I take on a new thing,
Mm-hmm.
I always see to it that the question is, what can I learn from this experience or from this
Experience.
task?
Yes. Yes.
So it's all about self improvement, and
Mm-hmm.
along the way there will be mistakes, of course, but
Of course,
I also learned.
everybody. Yes.
Yes, and so what I learned over throughout the years, that mistakes will always happen. Then they will
Mm-hmm.
happen, and what's important is how you address those mistakes. So how you learn from them. I mean, it's a kind of cliche, but that's how it is in real life. So you will always commit mistakes, and you just have to learn from it.
So I think the valuable insight of what you were saying is that one, if you are faced with something that's new, you can take it on as a challenge to you. And what you don't know, let's say this is really something new and you don't know about it, you could always try to learn about it. That is part of taking on the challenge. And of course, often, as we know in life, the failures or the mistakes and the lessons that it teaches us may be equally important as when we do have our successes, right? So I think we've really had these really good discussions about how students can try to pursue this field if they were so inclined, and also have a higher probability of success from all of your sharing and experiences. So we look forward definitely to more opportunities in the future for us to share with us your experiences in graduate school, and specifically, of course, in the field of international and European law. So maybe you can just give like some last words now to our viewers before we end our interview.
So as I was told, this was for the students, and to help them in their decision or what they want to do. So basically, it's just getting to know yourself better and getting to know what you want. And in whatever stage you are in your life, there will always be opportunities for you to learn, to study, or to improve yourself. So in whatever ways that will come along the way. So you take it and grab the opportunity. So, and it's not well for you, you're young, but and there will be several opportunities to you. So just take everything in, and try your luck and go on an adventure. So I think that's the best advice or tip that I can give to this aspiring students who want to go into the field of law.
Yes. Thank you so much again, Attorney Jeovert Solanoy, for joining us today. Yes, and I hope that we will meet very soon again in some other activities that we will be able to do together with education, and for young people most especially. Okay, so we'll be right back. Thank you so much.
AAA Live! Inyong napakinggan si Attorney AMIHAN April ALCAZAR. AAA Live! Naway kinapulutan ninyo ng impormasyon at kaalaman ang talakayan ng mga ekspertong nakapanayam mula sa iba't ibang larangan ng edukasyon. AAA Live! Ang AAA Live ay mapakikinggan at mapanonood sa Katipunan Channel tuwing araw ng Miyerkules alas 7 hanggang alas 8 ng gabi, where your academic goals will be advanced and achieved. AAA Live! Hanggang sa muling pagtatanghal.